Hello, teachers. It's great to have you here today in a morning of the weekend. Okay, so like being presented, I am Miss Trang, and I'll be sharing with you some information about how to get, understand, and respond to your students' feedback. So as you know, similar to giving your students feedback, it is also important to get feedback from your students so that you know how well you're teaching and how you can adapt your teaching to the students so that they can respond to your teaching much better. Right, so before we start, just a moment. I have something for you. Ooh, this one first. Okay. So how often do you take feedback from your students? For this one, let me send you the link in the chat so you can respond to me. I will try to be bilingual here. Okay, so if you have any questions, either in Vietnamese or English, just feel free to raise it in the chat box or leave it until the end of the webinar. We will have some time for the Q&A. Okay, 30 seconds. How often do you normally take feedback from your students? Okay, every session, that's good. Once a semester or one a course. Is that from the school or is that from yourself? Every month, okay, good. Okay. 10 seconds. I do know that some schools also ask the students to leave feedback to the teachers or to the lecturers at the end of the course, right? Or at the end of the semester. Okay. Right, so at least we are getting a start here. So we usually, well, none of you here have never taken feedback from your students. So that is a good start. So when you take feedback from your students, then what problem do you normally have? I did get some questions from you from your registration form that state you don't know how to get sincere feedback from your students, right? So later on, I can share you some tips on how you can do that. And what are some other problems that you have when you take feedback from your students? Later on, we can all be sharing, don't worry. Okay, 1 minute for this. It's the same Menti link in the chat box. Okay, a truthful feedback. Like, you mean they are too positive or they are too negative? Or how do you know that they are not truthful? Can you also explain a bit? You can feel free to open your mic and speak. This is just like in an online class, right? In an offline class, you want the students to be quiet, but in an online one, you always need them to speak up, right? They don't know how to express their comment. Ah, okay, I see. So they know that something is wrong, but they don't know how to express it, right? Like they know that they don't like your teaching, but they don't know where exactly. Okay. Yeah. Later on, I will have some parts about what kind of information that you can include in the student feedback form. And then to get a truthful feedback, then yep, there will be also some tips on that. Anything else?
Good morning, teacher. In my class, some of the students are very shy to speak out, and some of them they can express their.
So they know that something is wrong, but they don't know how to express it, right? Oh, sorry. Thư, can you turn off your microphone? Thank you. Okay. Yes, continue, Miss.
Okay. Some of the students are very shy to speak out, and some of the students they can't express their ideas, although they think the lessons is useful for them, but they don't know how to say. Yeah.
Okay, so they know that it's good, they like it, but they don't know where exactly they like it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much for your sharing. Okay, later on we can all share with each other some of our tips and advice on how to do that. I'll make the survey true feedbacks. Yes, okay, also truthful feedback, right? So it's not like, oh, this is a feedback I have to do. Meh, meh, okay, fine, good. And then we don't know where to, how to improve, right? Okay, thank you so much for your sharing. Right, so yeah, in today's session, I will give you some tips and advice on how to choose the information that you want to include in the feedback so that the students know exactly what to do. So when we are teachers, we know exactly what we are doing, right? So we know about the content, about the way that we teach, about the students' learning styles and everything. But then if we just ask the students, how do you feel about my teaching? And they will be like, it's okay. Then it doesn't really help, right? So it is important that we need to choose, or we need to include specific information so that they know exactly how to give feedback to us. So that will be covered later. And then also the methods. So you mentioned that they are not, you feel like they're not truthful to you. So it actually also depends on the way that you take feedback from them. So for example, if you approach them directly face to face like this, or you ask them to come to your teacher desk and then you ask them about how do you feel about my teaching, then I would say that 95% of the time they won't say something, well, they would say something that you would like to hear rather than something truthful, right? So yeah, there are some different methods that you can do, and I will also explain some of them to you later on. And then for the tools, so some schools allow technological devices, but then some schools don't. So I will also give you some tips on how to do both ways. Okay, so you can use it depending on your own circumstance. So once we are done with getting the feedback from the students, it is important that we know how to use the feedback. So later on, I can also give you something about how you can reflect on your students' feedback and whether or not you choose to adapt your teaching based on the students' feedback. So it is not about you take in everything that the students say, but it's about how you choose the one not that you like, but the ones that are beneficial to your teaching, and then you build on that. Okay, so the first part, we have the importance of feedback. I will just go through this part quick because since you're all here, I believe that you all know the importance of student feedback to us, since it helps us to develop much more effective teaching approaches and strategies, especially to match the needs and the preferences of the students, right? And here from Bishma et al. And Christuasen, then if you can get the improvement oriented feedback from the students, then it will be much better than just ask them to raise you like on the scale of 1 to 5 and then that's it. Yeah, and there will be a different teaching aspects that you would like them to focus on so that you can be better in each of the different aspects. Right, so the first thing here we come to the kind of information, the methods and the tools that you can use to collect the feedback from your students. So the first thing in terms of information, then there are actually two kinds of information. The first thing is quantitative and the second one is qualitative. So for quantitative, you just give them a question and you give them a list of answers like multiple choice questions. So an example of this can be, how do you feel about me? And then you ask them to rate from very dissatisfied to satisfied, very satisfied, and then there's a question, an option of don't know. Okay, and then there's qualitative feedback in which you would love the students to give you some extended answer or explanation of what they have mentioned above. What do you like best about my teaching, or what would you like to change in the classroom so that we can have a better learning environment, for example. So these are three examples of the type of questions. So let's pick our brain a bit. In the three questions here, which one do you think is not a good question? So we have number 1, number 2, and number 3. Oh, I should have numbered them. Okay. Just feel free to open your mic or type in the chat box. Which one do you think that, yeah?
I think the question, what would you like to change?
You think that is not good?
Yes.
Okay, why is that?
We have to put why, and why.
Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good one. So what would you like to change and why? Okay. Why does require a more extended answer? Okay. How about the other teachers? What do you think?
I think the first question is, how do you feel about me? You should change. How do you feel about the lesson?
Okay, that's a good one. Yes. So how do you feel about me here would be like more about the teacher's personality, right? And that is something that is not really likely to be able to be changed, right? So yes, about the lesson or about the content or about the teaching style or some specific aspect in your teaching, right? Exactly. I do feel the same. So unless you truly want to know how the students feel about yourself as a person or as a teacher, then you need to make that clear, right? Like, how do you feel about my teaching in general? Or how do you feel about my teaching style or something more specific? Exactly. So that's the first tip that we have right here. When you give the students, when you want to ask the students something, then it should be specific, right? About the specific aspect that you would like them to give feedback to you. Okay, so here, what else do you think that we can ask the students for feedback on? So teaching style, like I mentioned, teaching is a really broad term. So teaching style, what else? Can you type in the chat box or just raise your voice? What else?
I usually ask a question for a student that is, what benefit that the course have you to gain?
Okay, nice. So about the result of the course to them, right? The effect of it. That's a good one. Okay, yeah. That's something that they truly want to focus on, right? Especially test prep classes. Yes, okay. Teaching approach, teaching style. For teaching style, maybe I think they can figure out a bit, but then for teaching approach, they are not an expert in teaching approaches. So maybe you can clarify it a bit. when you want to ask the students about the teaching approach. Like, do you want the class to be more interactive? Do you want to speak more in class? Do you want to have more speaking activities or more writing activities, something like that, right? So they would understand, like in their language. But then for teaching approach, then yeah, teachers like us understand, yes. But then we need to clarify for the students a bit. Yeah. Okay. So yes, here are some other things that I would suggest you can also include in your asking the students to give feedback on your teaching. So the first thing is the teaching materials, right? So if you teach high school, then of course we have the textbook and there's nothing we can do with the textbook, right? We can modify it a bit, but we still need to cover everything in the textbook. But then beside the textbook, I believe that you would give them some extra handouts or some more homework in some extra books or just handouts you take from some Cambridge books and give it to them. So maybe to you, then they are beneficial to the students, but maybe to the students, they are too easy or too challenging or too much or too little. So from that perspective, then you would need to ask the students how they feel about the quantity as well as the quality of the extra teaching materials, right? Or some teaching activities. If in your class you really want it to be interactive, like I do, then I would include quite a lot of activities, of course, learning activities and games in the class, but then maybe some of the students don't like games, or some of the students prefer different kinds of games, like they don't like running up and down from their seat to the board. They don't like slapping the board like the little kids, but they like something more brain picking. So like they would want something like Sudoku or some quizzes or something like that, puzzles, rather than running up and down. So from that perspective, then yes, you should also ask your students how they feel about the teaching activities that you include in your classroom. And also, yeah, like the teaching style. So teaching style here can be a broad term as well. So you can ask, you can clarify it a bit, like I mentioned. Do you want the class to be more interactive? Do you want to have more writing practice or something like that? Do you want me to ask you more, or do you want me to just call your name? Or do you want me to not call you at all? Something like that. Yeah, I know that some students are terrified when get cold called by the teachers. So maybe that can be a part of the teaching style as well. So rather than just cold call the name out of nowhere, then you can ask them to raise their hand, or you can like have some kind of tool for them to raise or to do something so that they can signal you, sorry, that they want to raise their voice or something like that. And also your willingness to support the students. So if you teach courses in some English centers, then I think your class size is not too big. But if you teach in high school, then I do think that it can be a problem if you want to support each individual student, right? Because I think there are like 50 or something students in a class, in a high school class. So for this to happen, I mean, for your willingness to support students to happen, then maybe you can group the students into some smaller groups, and then you can ask a group representative to raise their voice, or you can ask the group representative to take the feedback or to take the support that the students need and then report it back to you, rather than you ask each individual students. And then the classroom atmosphere. To me, this is extremely important because we all feel like we can always take in information in any way, not just lesson. Information better if we feel close, or we will feel that the teacher or the speaker is friendly, right? So this one is an important part. And this one actually depends on your style as a teacher. So if you feel like you want to have authority in your class and you always keep a straight face, then that can actually create a boundary between you and the students. And of course, I'm not saying that the boundary is bad, but I think that they should be adequate. So they should be enough so that they respect you as a teacher, not their friends. But they should be low enough so that they can feel free to share with you what they want or what they need or what they need your support with. Yeah. So it's like in a class, if you are too authoritative and you ask them, do you need my help? Then they would be like, no, thanks, I'm good. Although they do really need your help. But if you're more friendly, you're more approachable, then they can call you and they can ask for you more like a bigger sister or bigger brother with respect. Yeah. Anything else you would like to comment on these things that I share here, or anything else you would like to add? Facilities. Yep, facility is a nice one. If you teach in high school, then you can't, I think, well, it depends on the school. You can't really interfere with how the facilities are in your classroom, right? But you can raise the voice to the one in charge. Yes. Don't care anything. What do you mean don't care about anything? Like they don't like the lesson or they don't like the subject or okay, they understand the lesson. So okay, they don't want to say anything. Okay, so that will be the part where we need to really poke them, right? So that they can share with us. So that one is a bit about classroom atmosphere and then also about something else that later I will share with you. Yeah. Just some more thing that I have taken from Scripts 2006. So these are some really good advice that I get from this article about providing specific guidelines or a structure for your feedback rather than just ask them, how do you feel about the lesson? And that's it. Because that is too broad and they don't know where to start. And then on observable behavior rather than what that student is thinking. So for this one, then what would be beneficial is that you, in your question, you note specifically the behavior that the students observe in the class rather than how they feel about the lesson. Because for feelings, then different students can feel differently, although you teach the same class, right? And then the effect of it, like you mentioned, and also offer some alternative to the behavior. So for example, instead of just saying, I don't like the homework, and that's it, then like, where exactly do the students not like it, right? Is it about it's being too much, or is it about it's too easy, or is it too challenging? Then how would they want the homework to be, right? So offering alternatives is a great way that can suggest to you what should be done. So yep, after the methods here, I can share you some tips on how you can really poke the students to get feedback from them. Okay, so for the different methods here, we have formal feedback, informal, oral feedback, and written feedback. So I think a lot of schools nowadays offer formal feedback. So with formal feedbacks here, the good thing is that the students have to do it. So you will get abundant resources for the feedback. But then the bad thing about it is that the improvement here can only be made for the next cohorts of the students, like for the next class of students, since it is only available to you after the module or even after the examination. So I would suggest that you put in more informal feedback here, more frequent, so you can get the response to the student difficulties more often, and you know exactly where they need. So for oral feedback, and then for for informal feedback here, I would recommend that you just leave it available at any time during the course. Later on, I can share with you some of the feedback that my students give me during the course, and I do see a pattern right there. So you can also choose to have oral feedback or written feedback, but then if the oral feedback here is you call each individual students to your table, then that would be terrifying to the student. So with oral feedback, then I would suggest just via a class representative or 3 class representatives. That should be enough. Of course, the representative here needs to be informed in advance, and they need to take the feedback from the other students first and then report it back to you. Okay. And then for the written feedback here, it can be in a lot of forms. It can be a survey or via email or forum discussion. But then the thing here is that it should be anonymous. The thing about it being anonymous is that it can help the students feel more free to give you feedback on your teaching rather than, oh, the teacher knows that it's me who talks, so I won't be giving him or her my truthful feedback, right? So for the effective feedback here, the first thing I would recommend is that you need to clearly state the objective here. So not just the students, but I believe that everyone would want to do something if he or she has a specific purpose in mind, a specific direction, right? So for example, when you join this webinar with me, then you expect to get some advice or some tips, or you would like to share how to get effective feedback from your students. So you have a purpose in mind, and then you join this webinar. So if you want the students to also do the same, if you want them to give you feedback, then they need to know the reason for it. So it's not like, okay, so this is the end of the course. I would like to hear some feedback from you, and then that's it. So they would be like, it's the end of the course. What's the point? I'm not studying with you anymore, right? So if you do it more frequently throughout the course, like at any time, then they would know that, oh, this is where I can raise my voice. This is where I can say what I like and what I don't like, and what I would like the teacher to do more or to do less in class. And of course, after you've read the feedback and then you choose to adapt to it, or you choose not to adapt to it, then you still need to communicate that to your students so that they know that, oh, their feedback is heard and their feedback is being taken into consideration, whether it is used or not. Okay, so that is about the objective. The next one is, yeah, like I mentioned, anonymously. So if you want the students to give feedback to you truthfully, then having it anonymous is an excellent way. They can really say what they want. It's like a confession. And without being worried about, you know, who they are, and you may have a bad influence, a bad, how do I say it? Like you can target them in class, right? So being anonymous here, that's a good way, but then it can also have its bad sides. That is when they know that you don't know who is writing the feedback or who is giving the feedback, then they may give you some really harsh words. like they just write it for fun because they just want to release the anger of somehow in the classroom. So for that not to get to you, or how you deal with harsh feedback, then that should be for later. Okay. So yeah, anonymous. And then the next part is to have open-ended question. So for this one, it is about qualitative feedback, like I mentioned. For quantitative feedback, it is good in that you break down the aspects that you want the students to focus on. But then if they only tick us good, 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 then you still don't know exactly where in that aspect that is good. So when you ask open-ended question that asks for students' clarification or further explanation of their choice above, then you can really get some insights into what they are thinking. So for example, teaching style, they note as good. So later on, you have a question like, can you explain your answer above? Something like that. Yeah. So they can give you some further explanation on what they say, on what they mean. Okay. And then frequently, yes, like I mentioned, it is not just about once a semester or about twice a semester. Twice is better than once already. But then for me, then I would want continuous at any time they feel like there is something wrong or there is something that they really, really like about the lesson and they would like me to continue in the class. So with this one, a frequent feedback can be of great help because I can really follow what the students think about my lesson and I will continue doing the good thing. And then for the bad thing, I will reflect on it and then I can choose to follow it or not. Okay. And then we have make sharing feedback easier. For this one, if you want to get the feedback from the student frequently and every time they want to give you feedback, they have to come to your desk and they have to take a piece of paper back to their seat and then they fill it out and then they submit it back to you, then that would be too much effort for the students. And so that would be, so there are ways for you to get feedback to this from the students more easily at any time they like. Okay. That would be for both online and offline, and they can feel free to go up there and then take a piece of paper, or they can feel free to go online and then just get some, input some of their feedback to you. And yep, the last one, this one is important, truly, truly important, to build trust for them. So like Miss Huyền mentioned here, when they don't care about the things in the classroom, I don't think that is about they do not care, but it's about they don't feel like their voice is heard. So in order to tackle that, then to build trust, to build an open classroom environment, a safe classroom environment is truly important because they feel like that this is a safe place. I can say what I want, but I won't be judged. I can connect the teachers. I feel like the teacher hears me, listens to me, understands me, and takes my thoughts into consideration. Then he or she will be much, much more willing to share his or her ideas. Yeah. Some of the simple things, like the really, really simple things that you can do first to build trust would be to smile, to smile more often. So if you want to be more approachable to the students, then the first thing that they get will be your vibe, like the feeling that they can approach you. So if you always keep a straight face and you always be authoritative, then that can be more challenging for the students if they want to approach you. But if you smile more, you ask them more, you show more positive emotions, you observe them and you approach them when you feel like they need support, of course, discreetly, then that would be much more appreciated from the perspective of the students. So to teachers, I do believe that we have a sense of where the students need our help, right? Or like when we ask a question and we look at the eyes of the students, and we know exactly if they can answer the questions or not. So from that way, if you feel like the teachers are avoiding your question, then maybe there is something wrong with the question. Maybe it's too easy, they don't want to answer, or it's too obvious, or it's too challenging, or they don't understand your question, or the concept is too challenging. Then that way you can adjust your question, or after the lesson, or when they are doing their exercises, you can approach some students, and then you can ask them about the question that you asked, or about the content of the lesson in general. Yep. Yep. So that is how you connect to the students, so that they are more willing to give their feedback. All right, so let's get back to make sharing feedback easier. So with sharing the feedback here, there are some tools that you can use. I'll give you some online tools first, and then later on we'll get you some direct in-class feedback tools. So for the online one, the most common ones that we have here are the Google Forms and Microsoft Forms. So if your school already provides you with a Microsoft Teams account, then you can just use Microsoft Forms. But if you have a Google account, then yes, you can just use a Google Form. Mentimeter is the one that I asked you to fill in at the beginning of the webinar. You can try that as well. But then for Mentimeter, it is limited to the free account of only 5 questions. So that is a bit limited. It's also anonymous. So you can choose to do it or not. Poll Everywhere is the same. Padlet, I think a lot of you know this already. We don't have time to go through all of these. So you can here, after the session today, I will give you my slides. So here we have the link already to each of these. So you can click into the link, and then it can get you to that tool, and you can figure it out. It's really easy, just like Google Form or Microsoft Form. Okay. Remember to make it anonymous again. Some of the ones that I have already given to my students. Here, let me give you some examples. Yeah. So for the left side here, this is from Microsoft Forms. So I use this for my class in university. And then this is the question about what they like best about my class. So this is just a general one. And then later on, I have some other questions about specific aspects of my teaching. So for the first one here, you can see that, yes, they are all anonymous. And they are actually really willing to give feedback to me. And from what they write here, then you can see that I try to create a friendly and a positive classroom environment, so that they can feel free to share their feelings and share their feedback and what they like or what they don't like about me. So this is the good side. And then here on the right column here, I use Google Form. So the thing about Microsoft Form and Google Form I like is that we can choose to make it anonymous, and then they are just there until we turn it off. So it is much more approachable to the students. It is easy. It is more user-friendly than the others, because for the others, you need to guide them, the students, on how to use it first. But for Google Form and Microsoft Form, they just click into it and they type whatever they want. So quite easy to use, user-friendly. Okay, so this is some quantitative feedback from my students about the different aspects. So here about how I organize my lessons. So I have some specific examples here, so that they understand what I mean. And then my teaching approaches, methodology, and then how I convey my lesson to the students, and my interaction with the students, and the content of it, and then a lot more. Well, not a lot more, but yeah, some more. Yeah, so when we want to have feedback from the students of different aspects, then we need to specify the specific aspect, but it should not be too specific or it would be too much. And the students would be confused. And then for the later question, they would just click, okay, nah, fine, good. And then that doesn't really help, right? So to me, about 5 or 6 different aspects should be all right. 10 would be a bit too much. Yeah, and then here, something they would like to change so that the lessons can be more effective. So I really like using ICT tools in my class, but then for this class specifically, then they would seem to say that some of the links that I sent contains errors, or I use too many tools, and it is difficult for them to catch up with the tools, because whenever I use a new tool, the students need to get used to it first before they can really use the tools for the learning purposes. So yeah, I can really see the pattern right here, and I try to limit that. I try to reduce the number of tools that I use to only the one that they are already familiar with. Yeah. Yeah, so pretty much these are some examples that you can see from my students and how you see a pattern of what they are saying, if they're willing to share, of course. Okay, so these are the online tools, and then for the in-class tools, then here are some great ideas that I have, that I have from the internet. So I wish my teacher knew, or teacher mail, or Dropbox, or student shoutouts. So you can decorate this in any way you want, of course, depending on your students' age group. So if they are elementary school students or secondary school students, then it can be more colorful. But if they are high school students or university students, then it can be more formal if you would like them to be. It depends on your style and how you want them to be. So you can reuse the boxes like this, or you can buy one if you want. You can have it transparent so that the students know that, yay, people are giving the teacher feedback, and I can also do the same, and it's safe to do so. Or you can have it like a mailbox like this. So these are some great ideas that I can see from the internet. Yeah. So these are the tools. Right, once we have the information, the feedback from the students, now it's our turn to settle down and reflect on what the students say. So the thing about reflecting on what the students say is that we all want to know what the students thought, and it is really tempting to quickly take a look at the feedback. But then if it is something negative, or if it's something that they say that you don't want to hear or you don't expect, then you may find it upsetting. So this is where it is a good idea to allocate the time and space to really read and analyze the feedback rather than just have a quick look at it. Okay, so it'd be great if you can have the opportunity to really sit down, to dedicate all of your energy into reading and analyzing what they're saying. So this way, at least you will begin the reflective process of the focus and plan, rather than just having a quick look until you rush to another class of teaching. And then sometimes the feedback from the students are quite negative. So it actually depends on the way that the students express themselves. So some students are not really sensitive about the way that they give feedback. So to deal with this, then you should only focus on the constructive content rather than the feelings in the feedback. Okay, so yeah, fundamentally, then you are never going to please everyone, and it's okay to be disappointed, to be hurt, or to even get angry if the feedback is negative. But then under the protection of anonymous feeling, then the students may from time to time leave you some really harsh words. And if you just take all of these into yourself, then it is easy to get discouraged from teaching. So it is about reflecting on the feedback here and truly read what the students want to say, rather than just take in the harsh words that the student have. So if you can't really do this in the first time reading the feedback, then I would recommend you leave it there for about a week or so, and then you read it again. So the second time you read it, then the feelings are there already. So you can just leave it aside, and then you can focus more on the constructive content of it rather than the feelings. And if you still can't do that, then another way that you can do is to consult a trusted colleague on this. So you may show the feedback to your colleagues if you 100% trust them, or if you feel like you don't want them to read it, then you can share with them, and that should be enough. So maybe you can say something like, my students say that I am too strict in the class. I call their name too often. Do you think that, do you do the same in your class, or do you think that it works? Or what do you think that I should do? Something like that. So when you ask them on their advice, then they may have a more objective reflection on the feedback rather than something personal like you have already had. Okay. So that is about reflecting on the feedback. So once you're done reflecting it, then now is the decision whether to react to it or not to react to it. So the thing about this is that it's when we want to get the feedback from the students, of course, we want to give the students the best time, the best learning experience they can have. But then if you are too responsive and reactive to the student feedback, then this can actually lead to unpredictability, or it may even foster the perception that the students can bargain with you, or even worse, you may seem indecisive and unprofessional if you choose to react to every single thing that they give to you. So this is where discernment is necessary before any adjustment can be made to the initial stated objective. So if you choose to react to it, then the students may see that, I give the teacher feedback and he or she is taking it into consideration and we are having a better class. That's good. Next time I will also give him or her some constructive feedback like that. So that is a good sign. But if it is something really harsh, or if it's something that you don't want your class to have it like that, then you choose not to react to it. What I mean here is not about you ignore it at all, but it is about when you choose to reject that suggestion of your students, you still need to respond to your students by explaining your reasons why you think that that suggestion is not suitable. Okay. There's one time in my class, I get a really, really long feedback about the way that I give them a lot of presentation in the class. So in my teaching, when I teach at HCMC University of Education, and I teach them using ICT tools in language teaching, the course, I get one feedback that says they have to do a lot of presentation in my class, and he or she thinks that it is not beneficial because they just do their part and they don't listen to any others, and it is a waste of time when the others are presenting their parts. So I did respond back to that feedback by saying that presentation is the active process of learning. So when you are presenting, you are actually doing a lot of soft skill, practicing a lot of soft skills like looking up information or screening information and then synthesizing information so that you can put on the presentation. And also you practice your speaking skills, presentation skills, in which you learn how to say something that the listeners want to listen to, as well as when you don't listen to the others, then that is your loss, because they put in the time and effort to put on the presentation like that. And instead of you having to do all of their work, now you only do your work and you listen to them and you can take the result of their work. So if you don't listen to them, then that is your loss. So after that, then, I mean, I still don't know who that student is, of course, but then there is the response back to the feedback in Microsoft Form. So I think that that is a really good way that I can respond to the students. And I also mentioned some of that in my class, and then after that, all of them seem okay, and they understand the purpose of my giving a lot of presentation in the class. Yeah. So in short, when you choose to not to react, then it is important that you let the students know your reason of why you choose not to follow the suggestion. Yeah, so with all of things here, all of the efforts that we try to give the students an excellent learning environment, once you've tried your best and there's nothing else you can do, then that's it. Be proud of yourself because you have tried. And whatever there is, then that is your best effort already. And it is impossible to please everyone or to please like at least more than half of the students. So if you feel like, if you believe in yourself, you believe in your teaching methodology, and you believe that you try your best in doing so, then just be proud of yourself. And eventually the students will understand you and understand why you're doing such things. If they don't, then you need to explain it to them because they're not learning about teaching, so they may not understand you. Yep, that's everything for now that I would like to share with you. Wow. So it's Q&A time, or anything that you would like to share about your experience of getting the feedback from your students that you would like to share with the others? No worry, Mr. Fan. Maybe you would need some time to, yeah, to take in the information, to process the information. Okay, thank you, Miss Huyen. Thank you for joining. Some of you need to leave. So before you leave, can you, no worries. Can you open your camera so that we can have some photo with each other? Hello, Miss Huyền. Hello. Maybe 1 minute for you to prepare, and then we will take some photos. Yeah. Thư, can you help me with the photos, please?
Dạ cô dừng cái share screen đi cô.
Right.
Rồi. Mọi người mình bật camera lên để mình chụp một tấm hình kỷ niệm cho ha. Rồi mình sẽ dừng cái web hình này. Còn thầy cô nào không có thể bật cam thì mình có thể react team sẽ chụp sẽ đang đứng ra. Rồi. 1, 2, 3. Rồi. Nó chụp xong.
Thank you too.
Em cảm ơn cô Trang đã dành thời gian hôm nay để chia sẻ rất là thú vị.
Thank you, teachers. I think I will be here for 5 more minutes, just in case you have some question or you would like to share something.
Thank you. Goodbye.
See you.
Sao rồi bé?
Sao rồi? Cái gì? Mở cửa.
So teacher, I would like to ask a questions.
Sure, yes.
Yes. So we should do the feedback after a period of time, like several weeks, right?
Well, it depends on you. To me, then I would just leave the link. Like I give the link to the students in the first class, and I say that just keep the link. You can fill it in anytime.
Oh, sure. But I think should we do it regularly so we can get all of the feedback from the student? If you put it in somewhere, people tend to forget.
Okay, yeah. Then maybe after a lesson, then you can remind them of that. Like, okay, so after today's lesson, if you feel like there's something that you would like me to do more or you would like to change, then feel free to raise your voice in the feedback form that I gave you. And then you give them the link again, something like that. Yeah, that can be a great way, yes, to remind the students to give you feedback.
Yes, okay, thank you.
No worries.
Em nha cô, nghĩ là mình xong rồi.
Yeah.
Chào cô.
Okay, thank you too.